Because of the new gods, the stones said. They didn't understand. No one understood the alien stones at the place's heart. Alien stones? The fourth moon, now dead, now fallen, with stone that is not quite stone. And when gods came here, then stone went haywire, vibrating at insane speed. She saw people sink into it. She saw destruction, terror, a landscape broken by the hand of Honor himself. Why had he destroyed this city? When the ground settled, the little map showed the shattered plains that she knew, a broken landscape, fractured, but bearing a haunting symmetry, a corpse. Why had Honor turned against them? It's still here, the stones whispered. What? The strange stone? The strange stones? And more. Come and see. When was this place broken? It showed her 9 figures in a ring with swords. Aharietiam, when the heralds had vanished. Come and see. Come to the center. Welcome back to Following Noah on Stormlight Podcast. This week is episode 246, and we are in chapters 58, 59, and 60 of Wind and Truth. Paul, how are you?
Magnificent. I am really excited, as always. I say that every time, and I feel like that might get old, but yeah, I mean it. I'm really excited to talk about these chapters, as always. Getting further, getting nearer to that halfway mark. Maybe one day we'll make it past halfway into this book, and I'm excited. I also can't help but notice, Trevor, you have a title on your name that says you are the CEO of Poker Faces and Theory Denying. And
True.
I'm just pointing that out. For those of you who are listening and cannot see Trevor's self-proclaimed title, that's what it shows under his name.
When I launched StreamYard today, it asked if I had a company title, and so I gave myself that company title. Eliot, how are you?
I'm going to laugh when that title is like permanently on your account now and you can't remove it.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out how to remove it, and I haven't figured that out yet, so we'll see.
Eliot and I do not have... I'm sorry to interrupt you, Eliot. I was going to say, we don't have titles yet. Are we just like Cosmere Trainee number 1, Cosmere Trainee number 2, if those are titles?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
But overall, I'm doing well. I was going back over my notes for this episode and realizing that we're at the point in the book now where we have so many different point of views overlapping and going back and forth that I have to carefully review my notes to keep track of what all is going on, because we've started to really rack up the number of plot threads that we've got going on as this classic giant Sanderson book. So fully expected this, but we are there.
I'm also having to comb through my notes more meticulously more recently. Before I could just, read through the whole thing once, gather my notes and go. But now I have to look at older books and, reread, et cetera, et cetera. Paul, do we have a patron?
We do. I'm happy to announce our newest surgeon of the bunch. I don't know whether to introduce the name or the mug first. I'm going to go with the name because it's my favorite. So I'd like to give a big introduction to our surgeon, Stephen. Stephen, thank you so much for your support, for being a surgeon. As we've learned in these books, that is very integral and perhaps by book standards more honorable than that of the soldiers, right? On my mug this week, this is an old mug that we found that Alex had. Actually, it's got a lovely little 4-leaf clover, and inside it says top of the morning. So top of the morning to you, Stephen. I don't know what time you're listening to this. Here it's about almost 10 p.m., but top of the morning to you. So yeah, absolutely.
It's 6 a.m. somewhere, right?
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, Eliot, 58, 59, and 60 summary for us.
Sure thing. Chapter 58 starts off with a really brief, another glimpse of Dalinar in the Visions spiritual realm with the heralds. Didn't actually get too much out of that, like one pager section right there. But then we pivot over to Chasm Fiends and Venli discovering a lot more about Chasm Fiends and what they're capable of. And apparently they have culture and sing songs and do other cool things like that. And then we pop back over to Dalinar, Navani, and Gavinor in the spiritual realm, discovering a few more things, a few more name drops, and then Dalinar is able to snag another object to carry them on to the next vision, or so we assume. Chapter kind of ends right there. Chapter 59 flashes back to Szeth again, and although we're flashing back, we're actually jumping forward. It's a 5-year time skip in our flashback Zeth timeline. Yeah, don't get too confused. Follow the jumping of the times. Zeth is now not only a soldier, but a leader on the battlefield and is leading his squad of soldiers against the raiders that are coming against their Shin people. He does this very successfully, kills lots of people, takes them all down, does end up getting stabbed himself, and then is healed. Lots of really interesting interactions with the voice in his head. I need to dissect some of this with you guys because there's some nuggets in here and I don't know exactly what they mean. But at the end of the day, Zeth wins the day, fights off the raiders, and then gets berated for it by his general who thought he went too far. Chapter 60 starts with Adolin visiting his troops, doing the leader relating to all the individual troops and soldiers, doing a good job of it. He's also recruiting some more soldiers into his army and going through a few of those people. And then back over to Venli to close out chapter 60 as she's continuing to learn about the Chasm Fiends and then get some really interesting lore information about the Shattered Plains. Really interesting. And kind of closes out the chapter with this mission of come to the center, come to the Shattered Plains. And that's where we leave it.
Yeah, when we get there, I'm gonna go ahead and read like a good majority of that exchange between the Stones and Venli because there's a lot, and I don't want to miss any of it. So towards the, I actually don't know when we'll be covering the Venli stuff. Maybe right away. I'll get out my book and read some of that. Paul, do you have 2 words that you got out of these chapters?
I do have 2 words. These words aren't particularly super creative, but they are ones that I feel like do a good job of encapsulating these chapters, and that is lore and corruption. Corruption may be a little bigger of a stretch. That's in reference to Zeth. I think I wrote in our live reactions that I thought Molly dying and that whole scene where his home is there's the invasion with the troops, that was going to be kind of Zeth's turning point or something from a more innocent, young, curious Zeth to the hardened Zeth we know now. I don't think that was the case. I think what we're seeing now is going to be that turning point. I feel like there's this corruption actively beginning to happen with the voice he's hearing. So that's why I chose. On the other hand, we have lore, which is chapter 58 in and of itself. We see lots of stuff with the heralds, lots of stuff, and we finally get some deliberate information about the Shattered Plains, which is really cool. Like we said, we're excited to read through all of that. So those are my 2 words.
Eliot?
My 2 words are each other. Each other. I think it's 2 words.
I think it's also 1 word.
Is it? Is it one of those you can smush?
You could smush it, but you can also, they're each independent words if you separate them.
I usually get in trouble for smushing, so today we are splitting. Each other, and a little bit of a teaser, I'm not going to talk about what these words mean because it's going to come up later, and I'll explain it when we get there.
Okay. Let's talk about Venli first, I think, because we start with Venli and end with Venli in these chapters. So we can go ahead and do that in 58 and 60. We get a Chasm Fiend culture lesson from, oh man, I don't remember his name, some other listener guy who wrote a poem from the perspective of Chasm Fiends about their conflict with the humans. Eliot, was it like an indentured stanza, like a Tolkien style poem in the book?
Yes.
Or was it? It was?
Yes, it is.
Cool. That is. I was wondering if it was read more like dialogue or if it was an actual like poem.
Yeah, it's actually like written in there as if it's a song or a poem or something like that. There's 2 examples on that page there that you can't see if you're listening to us, but if you're watching, I'm holding up the book. If you have the physical copy, you know what we're talking about.
Cool. Is this the first time that we've ever had one of those?
I would hesitate to say first because the number of pages that we've covered at this point is a lot. So odds of like something somewhere having done that probably fairly high, but I don't specifically recall anything that was formatted like that before.
This may not be fitting, but in a similar way that there's talks of like poetry or the Ketek and things in the Way of Kings. Was there anything like that may have been that's where my mind goes to as my guess, but I don't know for sure. We've definitely not had such maybe deliberate like sing-song nature So yeah, this may be the first, but that's my one guess is somewhere back in the Way of Kings, or maybe Words of maybe I don't think Words of Radiance. That's my guess is maybe in the Way of Kings there was something.
Was there some sort of structured song in Rhythm of War ever? I don't remember. Anyway, we get
What
go
What are
ahead.
your guys' thoughts on this kind of chasm fiend reveal? Actually, this fact that they have a society and they talk and they sing and they have like a warlike culture. They love challenges for the sake of challenges, kind of thing. It almost felt to me like a little mini version of the Parshendi are not orcs. They are an entire culture with history and all this thing. It almost was like another one of those, oh wait, the beasts that you thought were monsters are actually people. What
Mhm.
what was your guys' take?
I don't know if I had a super strong reaction to it. Besides, I did remember the the Parshendi reveal back in what early Way of Kings, or I'm sorry, late Way of Kings or early Words of Radiance, somewhere in there. And it's it's like blurring the line between like sentient or sapient, or we've had this conversation before, and not like and beast. So I wouldn't call them, and maybe this is incorrect, but at the moment, I wouldn't call them as aware as, say, a Khandra, but maybe that's not true. Maybe they are meant to be portrayed as a fully intelligent, like a dragon type thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had some mixed feelings on this, and I think what it really comes down to is that I cannot think of this in terms of anything like on Earth, like in real life, because I think of lots of animals, right? Like I was in my head, I was comparing this to many species in the animal kingdom, right? Have like very nurturing mentalities, like lots of things like that that could very well be attributed to you could definitely extrapolate and have a lot of like this energy that there's a system, there's an order to how they live and things like that, right? But it is a bit different, right? They can communicate with each other, but this is obviously different. This is a little bit of a different situation, and it does just feel like a kind of like what Eliot was saying, like it's not a mindless orc, like it's a the term Trevor was also trying to go for, sapient or conscious, like being and society almost. I had mixed feelings about this. I think it's really neat to see the connection they have with the singers. Like I feel like that makes sense of kind of this this like original to Roshar. I feel like that's a big theme in this book is the things that are original to Roshar, the wind, the stone, the night, the maybe the Parshendi and chasm fiends and things like that. It almost makes me wonder. I wonder if we will learn more about this or this is becoming relevant because we begin to see glimpses of what the Shattered Plains were before. And at least as far as I can remember, we've only seen chasms in the chasms of the Shattered Plains. I don't know if they had the name Chasm Fiends before then, but like where were they? What did they do before there were these chasms? Maybe they were there and they were covered up, but
Sure.
my understanding is that was a result of this shattering, right?
I mean, you do kind of bring up a good point that they're called chasm fiends and they were apparently pre-exist the chasms. So maybe they were called something else before that. I don't know.
Just fiends before
Right.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Flat plateau fiends.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
Yeah.
They
If
they had a line that said they can carry dozens of us on their back. And on my bingo board, I have, and I quote, a listener or singer rides a chasm fiend.
That you do.
That said, I don't think I technically get this yet because they haven't on screen ridden a chasm fiend. They just said they can carry us. So I don't think I actually get this yet.
It's inevitable.
you are right. But I think this is one of those that puts you in a really good spot of you cannot cash that check today, but I feel good about your odds
Right.
in the future that they're setting that up. And there's probably going to be a really cool moment of the listeners, the Parshendi riding in on chasm fiends, which will be pretty cool.
One of you two has someone enters a chasm on the Shattered Plains, which is also about to happen. Who has that?
I think it's me.
I think it's Eliot. Yeah. I don't
Okay.
think it's me.
Because that's also about to happen by the end of chapter 60.
One other thing I wanted to say about the chasm fiends, which I thought was really fascinating, is it talks about them singing, and there's an allusion to them with song. We've seen mentions of like the rhythms and like kind of this aspect of like the music of Roshar, like as a natural thing. And what I thought was really cool, actually, I like that Brendan included this detail, is that they can sing two pitches at the same time. So one thing, this is kind of a random funny story, but I remember my mom telling me a long time ago. Both of my parents are musicians, for the record, and I remember my mom telling me long ago that someone she worked with like really thought someone was like possessed or something crazy was going on because they walked in while they were singing along to a recording they had made of themselves, and they were singing like different parts, like and
Okay.
it's just like crazy because it's something totally unnatural. You can't sing two or say two different like tones at one time. It's physically impossible. It's why you have choirs to fill up all the different parts and stuff, right? So it's really something I was trying to wrap my head around. And this is not necessarily super relevant to the rest of everything going on, but anytime you like multiply anything, right, like going just from 1 to 2, the like capability for complexity just like amplifies, you know. And so I'm really like, I wish there was some way to hear this song, like to hear someone singing two parts themselves at once. Like that's just really neat aspect. That was a really cool little fantastical element, I guess, something that you cannot do, but I bet would be really, really cool to see. So that's my 2 cents about the Chasm Fiends and their ability to sing. Thought that was pretty neat.
I did not spend more than 2 seconds thinking about it, but I'm glad you did, Paul.
Absolutely. I've got to find some way to contribute.
But the Chasm Fiends, according to the listeners, refer to the Shattered Plains as the land of fallen stars. I don't know if you guys stopped and thought about that for a second, but I tried to think of like, okay, what does that mean? And that came before the chapter 60 reveal of the fourth moon and all of that, which I will read here in a second. But the Chasm Fiends calling it the land of fallen stars. Did that catch your guys' attention like it caught mine?
Do you think that that means it's where all of the like one-hit wonder musicians and like the Disney stars who are in one show go to the land of the fallen stars? Is that who was residing in this city?
So like Owl City, is that what you're saying?
Oh no, he's not fallen. He's pretty relevant today. But you know, there are plenty out there. I don't have any examples off the top of my head.
I mean, you came out with like 3 examples right off the bat, and then
I was just
tried to
thinking
back out of
ambiguously.
this.
There's
Sure
kind
you
of a
were.
stigma of a lot of like Disney child stars who then like kind of go off the rails as they get
Yeah.
older. That'd be my example. But to answer your question more seriously, I didn't. I feel bad I jumped in with my joke because I'm not certain. I'm not certain what this is referring to. My guess is that this is something related to maybe the Alethi coming over. I'm not sure. I don't actually know.
I did not actually think twice about this, and I'm a little disappointed with myself that I didn't, because I read it twice, as I usually do, with going back through to take notes. And Land of Fallen Stars, I didn't blink. But with what's coming in chapter 60, rather relevant.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and read it. It's a little lengthy, and I've cut a decent amount out, but go ahead and grab your mug and listen and jot down anything that you want to talk about after, because there's a lot like packed right in here as the stones talk to Venli. The high storm hits as a little background for you, and then the stones say, "Yo, come watch this." And Venli's like, "What, the storm?" And the stones say, "No, watch us." And then this is what happened.
But before you read, is this chapter 60 that you're reading from?
Yes, this is towards
Okay.
the end of chapter 60, which I'm
Got it.
going to get into here. This starts on page 591. "Watch, Venli," the stones whispered, "and see." Venli crouched and watched the sand dance on stone, vibrating. They separated, forming into groups. "We enhance. You can enhance further." Venli drew in Stormlight and placed her hands on the ground, letting the vibration fill her. Then pushed Stormlight out. The stone began to shift, becoming as if liquid. Often when she'd done this, she'd commanded the stone to take certain shapes, molded in part by her will. Today, she let the tones do the shaping. The resulting pattern was curious to her. The shattered plains? Yes. Timber said it looked exactly like the Shattered Plains. She'd always assumed the Chasm Fiends came to the plains to better access the storm, but that wasn't it. It was something else. Show me, she thought. Come to the center of the plains, your former home. But beware, a battle happens there now. Show me what you can here. They came to make a city like the others, the stones said. Humans. They brought with them power to make the stones vibrate, an incredible power. This land had been home to singers once, then to humans with vaguely blue tint to their skin. They built a grand nation and had wanted a capital city, as befitted the other great nations, a 10th Oathgate. They had built it with their power. When was this? Venli asked. They showed her Urithiru being built, and soon after, the coming of a great king, and Timber knew him, the one known as Noadon. There wasn't any radiance then, she thought. Once you sang with us, needing no radiant bonds. The humans were the same. Radiance had organized and structured their powers. Something about using the powers without structure had been dangerous. Because of the new gods, the stones said. They didn't understand. No one understood the alien stones at the place's heart. Alien stones? The fourth moon, now dead, now fallen, with stone that is not quite stone. And when gods came here, then stone went haywire, vibrating at insane speed. She saw people sink into it. She saw destruction, terror, a landscape broken by the hand of Honor himself. Why had he destroyed this city? When the ground settled, the little map showed the shattered plains that she knew, a broken landscape, fractured, but bearing a haunting symmetry, a corpse. Why had Honor turned against them? It's still here, the stones whispered. What? The strange stones? And more. Come and see. When was this place broken? It showed her 9 figures in a ring with swords. Aharietiam. When the heralds had vanished. Come and see. Come to the center. I wanted to read all of that because there's a lot. Which one do you want to grab first? There's like 3 different major things there.
I was curious about the 10th Oathgate. Is that a thing? Do we know how many Oathgates there are? I thought there were much less than 9 or 10.
There are 10, and they're relatively centralized to all original 10 kingdoms on Roshar. And apparently this Narok one was the last one to be built.
Okay. I guess I had forgotten about that. I'd also point out a brief Noadon mention. I don't know if that deserves any further discussion, but that was really cool to see.
It is worth pointing out because the Noadon mention gives you a time frame, and that's what Venli's wanting. So there's the Natan people. Is that right? The Natan people who are vaguely blue-skinned show up at Narok. They want to, which are human, they want to create their own capital, which they do with Surge Binding before the Knights Radiant. And all the other Oath Gates are already in existence before the Knights Radiant. So that is, I think, important. That they created the Oath Gates and Urithiru pre-Knights Radiant, which I guess we already knew because they're around when Noadon's doing his thing. But at this point in time, the humans are quite well established on Roshar. They're all the way over to the far eastern side of Roshar, and they still haven't formed the Knights Radiant. They still are using Surge Binding pre-bonds. So that's what I got out of that.
It was notable to me that said the city was broken by the hand of Honor.
Yeah.
Honor itself.
Yep.
Right. And it points to the circle of 9 swords, Aharietiam, right? And that this is a resulting factor of that. Is this like essentially the 10th Oathgate that would have represented maybe Taln in some capacity? I don't know exactly how that would work, but I was trying to figure like, okay, why would that Aharietiam result in a city completely crumbling and dissolving and breaking up into the earth? Like, why would that happen? Guessing it's tied to the Oathgate specifically. I don't know for sure.
Where does the 4th moon fit into this? Is the 4th moon falling to the earth? Is that the destruction of the plains? Or is the destruction of the plains by Honor after that?
I was surprised that Honor was still around, to be honest. I thought Honor dying might have been long before this, but Aharietiam happens alongside the plains shattering. So 4,500 years ago, which, as far as Dalinar's timeline goes, is still quite a bit in the future from the Oath Pact forming.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fourth moon. The fourth moon. What's the fourth moon? Is this a fourth shard? Is this an Adonalsium moon that was like the original only moon and then the other three showed up? Where'd you guys go with it? Does not have anything to do with shards?
I didn't go the direction of shards, but it very well could start to tie into something like that because we've talked about before how the colors of the moons seem to match our 3 shards that we have on Roshar. So there being a fourth, does that indicate a fourth shard? Was there a fourth shard? There's no longer a fourth shard. Those are definitely questions. I went a different direction with it, all based on the phrase alien stones. Did you guys notice
Yeah.
that in there?
Yeah.
The immediate implication there, alien stones like moon rocks. The moon has fallen, so there's shards of cool stone, metal, maybe stuff from this moon. But then I thought of something else. I actually just thought of this as you were reading this, Trevor. Alien stones. Something else popped into my mind. We've got other people walking around with literal alien stones in their pockets. Do you know what I'm referring to? It's
No.
the people that came through the portal from Ashen. It's been mentioned multiple times now that they stopped to bring rocks with them. Wit had
Okay.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's specifically mentioned at least 2 other times that others who came through did the same thing. They picked up rocks on their way through as a memento from their previous world. I don't know if that has any link whatsoever, but doesn't Dalinar have one of these like in his pocket because Wit gave him his?
Yes, he does.
So I was immediately
That is
just
a-
starting to wonder, is stone from another world gonna become important?
That is a really good question. I think that's an excellent similarity that you drew, Eliot. I just don't know how those pieces would fit together.
Right.
Of like, you're right. They make a point that they bring rocks over from their planet as they're coming through this portal. And I was a little bit puzzled. I was like, I don't know, I guess a little memento, a little memory of home, I guess, for them. No idea. But the stone it talks about here, I don't know how that would have any connection to that, to the rocks that they pick up as they are coming through the portal. I can't really put those pieces together. Maybe there's some greater connection we will learn with the stone we know as one of our ancient entities, original entities of Roshar. Maybe, and there's a big reverence for rocks and stones, the Shin that we're learning about through Zeth's flashbacks. But I cannot put any of these pieces together as to why that would be relevant, why that would be connected here. So clueless.
The direction I went with it is the alien stones is from the crashed moon. The crashed moon was from a separate shard. Therefore, that alien metal would be that shard's god metal.
Oh,
That's where I went with, like along the lines of Atium and Lerasium, etc., etc. Like, what if Ambition showed up on the system a long time ago, planted the Invisagers, and left, or maybe was chased off by Honor or whatever? Moon dies. That's where my brain went along those lines.
or we could complicate this even further because it talks about Honor, that the landscape was broken by the hand of Honor himself. I'm still kind of stuck on the falling moon is the destruction of the planes. That might not be true.
That might be,
But
though.
if Honor did that, is that making a reference to, if we go with your train of thought of a fourth shard, did Honor kill that shard?
Right. Or did he like defend the system and drive it off at least, like that type thing?
Yeah.
Is there a chance that that was Honor, and that the other moons that we have do not actually relate to Honor, but we've like kind of been led to believe that? Because we know
Maybe.
Honor
Would
was
be.
shattered and splintered. Either way, you are looking at 4 shards with the way we've been talking about it, which I still have mixed feelings about. I definitely want there to be 4 shards. I'm rooting for another one. I just don't know who or how. I feel like that'd be a really awesome rereader perspective thing.
I assume this
Anyways.
fourth moon is pale, is white, the one that we've seen in those visions a couple times. That's a pretty
yeah.
leapy assumption to make, but that's the assumption I'm making, is that original moon was white or pale yellow or something like that. And the current moons we have color correlate to the shards we currently have, including honor.
What if we've talked before about the possibility of, did Honor splinter himself, either like on purpose or by accident? Did Honor do something dishonorable and cause himself to cease to exist? Could the destruction of this other shard have been a dishonorable act? And this could be actually both. It's Honor destroyed this other shard and himself in the process.
I could see it. Yeah. This is one of those reveals where I feel like we're going to get the answer in like 3 chapters, and we're going to spend all this time theorizing when all we need to read is like 60 more pages. But it could be an end book thing. I don't know.
The pacing of this book definitely feels different, and I'm guessing we are going to see this earlier because of the whole day system we have. I'm like, the reveals kind of have to come earlier rather than at the very end of the book, but I could be very wrong. Sanderson is an expert of payoff, and a lot of times that payoff will come in the last 100 pages of the book, depending on the length. But I'm definitely from this story. First of all, we were curious to see when Venli would come onto the scene, what she'd be doing, what would be happening, what would be her relevance to the story. That's a question I'd been asking. Is like, there is one of these 5 books was somewhat dedicated, was her book about her, origin, backstory, and things like that. But she's not been in it much. Like she hasn't been run. And this feels like a major piece that we're going to see with her. And my interest in her storyline just like skyrocketed. Like, oh, we're going to go learn the history of the Shattered Plains, that like the lore behind it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sign me up. I'm down to read those chapters. That's going to be a blast. This chapter, reading about this and the stones and this destroyed city and stuff, definitely gave me some like Atlantis vibes. I thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, we're going to go just find the rubble and the chasms of this ancient city and stuff like that. I thought it was kind of fun. So yeah, I think Venli is our little Atlantis discovering the lost city Indiana Jones character right now.
Isn't it going to be cool though when they load up their chasm fiends and they're going to like sneak through the chasms while the battle's going on up above them, and they're going to find like this big cavern full of this whole other city underneath the shard. I'm excited. I want this to go full Indiana Jones. Let's go.
I think you're right. That's going to be pretty cool. And Trevor's going to be excited to cross off his bingo board.
There was a one-liner back in Words of Radiance that Shallan and Kaladin are walking through the chasms. And Shallan has the thought of, I wonder where all the water drains. Like, there's so much water and it drains so fast. Where does it all go? I think there's some like incredibly cool underground like storm drain system that this city had that's still functional for the Shattered Plains, and I think we're going to find it. I've thought about that line a lot for years.
There's a tie-in. That'll be really cool if that's true.
Absolutely. Tying on to the idea that Trevor might one day mark off a bingo slot, I want to say in chapter 58 that I can go ahead and claim my bingo slot, that we have met all 10 heralds, or all of the living heralds, because don't they say that they're definitely like the missing what okay, we're missing
you're
Videl
missing Pila and
Alia.
Videl, yes,
but weren't they here? Like, weren't they there? And don't they like distinguish that?
No, Navani is still in Pila's body. So that was the same distinction of last week, is they're all there, but Navani is still in Pila's body, so you haven't technically met Pila yet.
I don't know about this.
Once Pila has dialogue and talks to us, then you can check it off. I'm sure it's coming.
Well, I guess that's okay. Okay, hold on.
We'll have a whole debate episode later on when we're actually fighting over who is winning the bingo overall on all this, I'm sure.
We need to get stricter on these rules, Paul, because Eliot's going to have to fight for a lot of his board, and we got to be able to lock his down as much as we can.
That's fair. I will say, regardless of whether or not I get my bingo spot marked off, I have really loved all of the Herald content, dialogue, even if it's somewhat short or jumpy or like all sorts of things. We are seeing the Heralds converse, and they're not crazy. They're rash. They're like they have functional minds left. Like this is before all the
Yes.
chaos and all the breakdowns and insanity and everything, which is I feel lucky. I feel fortunate to be able to read these scenes, honestly.
I enjoyed the scene where he gets in like a knockdown, drag out fight with a couple of the heralds by trying to steal his little trinket that he grabs. Yezrian has this little glyph that Nail gave him a while ago, and he's like, "Oh, I need to grab that because that's my next anchor to go see Nail for next episode." And he grabs it, and then Chanarach like tries to tackle him because he's now an imposter, and she sees it, and like she's the bodyguard. I thought that was quite funny.
I think it's cool to start putting a personality up against them all. You get Ash as the angsty teenager, and Yezrian as the cautious leader, and Chanarach as the super cool, awesome bodyguard chick. And you're just starting to like put a persona around what has just been names and stained glass windows up to this point.
And Kalak is the brains. We brought this up a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
But Kalak is the brains. I was not expecting that.
I actually was expecting that, but solely based off of like what we know about the orders, you
Sure,
know, like
sure.
like the Truth Watcher order. I'm like, I figured he's more of a like we opened the whole story with him like in the slain thunderclast, and you're like, oh, this must be a mighty warrior. But like, and he was, because he was a herald, and they got a lot of stuff going on. But amongst them, he's probably one of the least of like the fighters, right? He was more of like an academic or a scholarly-ish type character, has always been my understanding of him, especially how we see him in Rhythm of War. But he's a bit weaselly, but you know,
Good word.
it is really cool to see that. I've loved beginning to have more of an attribute to put with them, like Eliot was saying, especially with characters like Yezrian. We've known him to be somewhat of like the leader of the heralds and like this king figure, and we've only seen drunken Ahu, right? So like rambling nonsensically a lot of the time. And so it's cool to see, like, at least get an image, a picture of what he was, what he embodied at this time is cool. Same with Ishar as well, kind of this like wise leader in a way, one that they look to in a lot of respects. It's been cool to see the heralds as they were. I've really enjoyed that. I hope we get to learn more about all of them. This is a great opportunity for that. I feel like this is like the opportunity. If we are going to learn anything about their characteristics, it will be within these visions with Dalinar going on currently. If not, then it's just Brandon isn't going to write that, and that's okay. Unless there's some like novella or something he goes back and does, but I don't think that's in his plans. I don't think we'd see it other than what's going to be in these scenes.
Eliot, in the outline, you have a scary bit of Gavinor info on the outline. I don't know if I didn't catch this or if I didn't put as much weight on it, but what are you referring to?
Yeah, you ready for me to scare you? So leading into this book, before we even picked it up, many people, not just us, were spinning theories about Gavinor. And something that kept coming up was this crazy idea of, what if somehow Odium picks Gavinor as his champion at the Contest of Champions? And then we have this huge dilemma. Can Dalinar kill his nephew? No.
Grandson.
Great nephew? Second
Great.
nephew.
Wait.
Something.
Second nephew. Second
Second
nephew.
cousin?
I think it's
It's his
I don't know.
nephew's. It's his nephew's son, so it's his second nephew.
Anyway, Gavinor.
great
Whoever
great
he
nephew.
is,
I googled it.
Okay, great.
Or grandnephew actually. Yeah.
Thank you, Google. Could Dalinar fight? You know, this would be crazy. This would be wild. All these things. We then kind of, as we've started this book, started to maybe bring up like, okay, how would that be possible? How would Odium get Gavinor into that kind of situation? As soon as we saw Gavinor get sucked into the spiritual realm, we're like, oh my goodness, he's gonna come out as a 20-year-old and, you know, be able to be Odium's champ. All these crazy ideas, right? I don't know that we've seen any single one bit of evidence that actually supports any of that yet, until I turn to page 571 in the book. Let me read you this, guys. This is a very brief scene with just Navani and Gavinor. Dalinar has like walked away to go into the hut to go talk to all the heralds that we were just the scene we were just talking about. Outside the hut, Navani and Gavinor are talking, and here's what Gavinor says. Gavinor grew thoughtful after his way. I remember I heard something earlier before Grandpa found me, a nice spren that said it could protect me from the bad ones. It sounded like Daddy. And at first pass, I just was thinking, oh, okay, that's sentimental. He was hearing the voice of his father. We've talked about, is he going to get to see the face of his father and all these memories? His father's comforting him in that dark moment where he's getting like tortured by his mom. But what if that's not what that was?
I didn't get past the first pass. That's what I thought it was. So what's your second pass?
What if this nice spren who is saying, I'll protect you, could be the influence of not the good guys, starting to maybe connect with, reach out to Gavinor a bit to perhaps set up some kind of situation where they can trick little Gavinor into agreeing to fight for something. Because it feels like that's what we need, some kind of commitment from Gavinor to say, I will fight for that. What if this nice spren, I'm doing the air quotes that you can't see if you're just listening, this nice spren, this voice on his shoulder that's reaching out to him in a moment of being scared, what if it's a trick? What if it's a trick?
I, for one, am certainly on board with this. I knew that there were things going on. I didn't really tune in hard to this. I did read through this twice, and it must have. There's a bit of moments in spur little comments from Gavinor, and I didn't key in too hard. I didn't catch this, and I think you're right because there's been a lot of this. Okay, yeah, I think Gavinor would be a great champion for Odium because Dalinar would refuse to kill Gavinor, like for sure, would refuse to fight, right? But I never really thought of how does Gavinor become Odium's champion? Hypothetically, how does that happen? I've never doubted that it's I've never doubted that it's not possible. Like I've always thought it was a possibility, but I didn't necessarily know how. And it absolutely makes sense. There's sadly and unfortunately, Gavinor would be rather easy to manipulate in this way. Of all Gavinor really wants deep down is he wants revenge for his father and for the things that were done to him as a kid. Like he's pretty traumatized by all of this, like the corruption of his mother, the death of his father. Like there's a lot that he's angry about and wants revenge for. All that needs to happen is for him to be convinced that what he would fight for is for that semblance of that sign of vengeance. That's all he needs. And he's young enough to not know the better, to be like, yeah, I absolutely, like, I could fight this, I could fight them. I want to, avenge my dad, right? And move on. And then you have him signing up contractually to being Odium's champion or something. I'm very curious. There's also been so many allusions. We talked about this before the evidence was the hint that Gavinor keeps saying with Dalinar that they want to play swords, right? We've had that mentioned several times, kept coming up of, oh, we haven't had a chance, but we're going to play swords sometime. And there's the sick joke that I'm afraid Brandon is going to make on the day of the Contest of Champions, that they're going to play swords at the Contest of Champions. Anyways.
And even more recently than that, they found Gavinor, and Navani has had the line of, oh, this is all pretend. This is all, make believe. And it's not really. But that's how they're choosing to describe it as to Gavinor. And he can calm down, and that works in the moment. But what if he's now not going to be able to tell the difference? And they set him up on top of the tower and say, this is all pretend. Go play swords with Dalinar.
That I hadn't man, y'all are bringing up some excellent things right now. It's tragic, but smart. Because I thought of this like, okay, but what if Gavinor sees Dalinar and is told like, yeah, go, you're gonna fight Dalinar. He's gonna be like, no, I don't want to fight my not for real. We'll want to play swords, right?
Right.
He could absolutely be told, yes, you're playing swords, and Dalinar will rightfully probably defend himself, but never attack, right? And it just further would fuel the wrong understanding, that the illusion set up for Gavinor that this is pretend and he's playing swords with Dalinar. Oh man, that if this is true, then I am not prepared. Even though if it is true, we've theory spun it a lot.
And
No
I think
idea.
these threads are thin. We've come into this book with this theory kind of on our minds, so we might be force fitting the evidence to line up with our theories.
Well, and
But
Brandon might be giving us these on purpose.
yes,
That's
yes,
true.
Because he was well aware
Yeah.
of this theory.
Mhm.
also that.
Very true.
Also that. So I'm not quite ready to jump on the bandwagon of this is happening, but there hasn't been a lot of evidence for it. But this could be a little bit. That this could be a thread that plays out in that direction if we get more. So I'm going to be watching for more of how is Gavinor interacting with Spren he thinks are being nice to him.
Let's talk about Adolin real quick, and then we'll jump into the Zeth flashback chapter to end the episode. Adolin has a decently short scene in chapter 60 about recruiting and who he's allowed to recruit, who he's allowing himself to recruit into the Azish army here in the defense of the Oathgate. And he says that he's still denying 9 out of 10 applications, that it's not so dire that he's throwing swords at any, worker that is willing and throwing bodies at the Oathgate. But he is actively recruiting civilians. So he has this good scene with this young girl who, stereotypical, I want to, defend my homeland's under attack. I want to defend, what is she, 12 or something like that? That's the mental image I got of adolescent young girl who he gives her a shield and then just keeps knocking her over and over. This scene is pretty typical of, I understand that you want to fight, but you're not ready. But I still quite enjoyed it, of Adolin really trying to get across the idea of you have every right to feel that you need to defend your homeland. However, I cannot put you in a shield wall. That is irresponsible of me for other soldiers. Like, you just physically can't hold a shield wall like other people can. And so I can't put you in the wall for the lives of everyone else, but I can still definitely use you as, a messenger or whatever. I really enjoyed this scene.
I also really enjoyed this scene, and it stood out to me way more on a reread because I think it was really. I'm going to use the term loving, as in like the combination of kind but truthful. Not a blind, like, yes, let's sign you up. Like, he thinks of the consequences or the potential implications that could happen of bringing someone into the army, the military here, that could pose further risk, right? He asks her point blank, says, do you really want to be the weak link in a shield wall? Like, is that really what you want? Like, you want to serve, and I want to allow you to serve. Offers her the opportunity to serve as a messenger, which she really is not for. But then he goes further into this. Do you really want to be the weak link? This allows you an opportunity to serve and learn and train to then maybe one day serve in a capacity that maybe is more of your goal, more of your plans, your dreams, like the way you want to serve, which is like unfortunate. I felt bad for this girl. Also, side note, I thought it was kind of fun that they had like an in-world story that they related this to. I don't remember the name of it, and they even like specified that it's something that the Alethi can't really pronounce. It's
Yes.
like local to this place, and it reminded me of like a Mulan story. Like, this was like their in-world story of Mulan, of a girl who goes off to fight for her family. I believe it was to like maybe for a brother or something like that. And I thought that was really, really neat, really cool. One, like, cool little world building aspect. Two, like a cool little like inspirational story. Adolin even relates about a story of his own, like a story that they have. And I thought that was really cool how he used. I was kind of expecting this recruiting to be dull and monotonous, and we wouldn't really see anything with it. It'd just be like, yeah, Adolin recruited this many people and they're training them. That's what I was expecting. And here we had a really cool scene. And yeah, I think this was one of those scenes that can kind of fly under the radar, but was really good, really valuable. And I feel like I enjoyed it. I think this chapter and those scenes were actually my favorite in this episode. Even above, like, to be frank, we haven't talked about Zeth yet, but I think this was maybe my least favorite Zeth chapter we've had of this book. But that shouldn't discount this chapter. I thought it was good.
That quite surprises me, but we'll get to that in a second. Eliot, any thoughts on the Aelin scene here?
Yeah, a few actually. The bits that you guys were talking about with the recruiting and the scenes with him just talking with the soldiers is all kind of digging further into this. What is Adolin's leadership style? How does he inspire his troops, and how does he make decisions about his troops?
Wow, you offended him.
I guess so.
Welcome back.
My apologies. Did I mess everything up?
No, you're good. We're still going.
All right.
Just further digging into how does Adolin inspire his troops? And there's another scene, another bit of dialogue right before the recruiting scene that you guys were talking about. And Adolin's thinking about how his father, Dalinar, would inspire these troops and how Adolin's going about it differently. And he thinks this to himself. None of these soldiers really fought for their country or their ideals. Not in the moment. It might have been why they signed up. Maybe it was why they said they fought. But in the sweat and blood and chaos and storm of the battle, they fought for none of that. They fought for one another. When you stared down death, it was the people who mattered. And when I read that, I had my own flashback. I had a flashback to my high school track and field team. Shout out to Coach Daggett.
Coach
Daggett was awesome. Shout out to Coach Daggett. He taught us as a track team to run for each other. Those are my 2 words for the chapter for these chapters was each other. And before every track meet we had, during track meets that we had, when we would run, I ran on a relay team, so this was specifically relevant. Our cheer, our chant, our war cry as a track and field team was always each other. And someone like coach or someone on the team would call out, "Who do you run for?" And we would all scream at the top of our lungs, "Each other." And that was powerful for me. That stuck with me, of that going into battle, going into combat, going into it's track and field, so it wasn't actually combat, but it was battle in a sense. And we went into it for each other, for the guy who I'm handing the baton off to. That is who I'm there to run for, not for me, not to beat these other people on the track, but for my teammates, for the people around me. And this moment in the book reminded me of that.
I also thought of that, but I was 5 years delayed from Eliot, so slightly different track team, but still the same coach. All right. Speaking of teams, Szeth. Paul, how on earth is this your least favorite Szeth scene so far? Szeth goes full like Navy SEAL special ops on these invader guys, fakes getting captured, hides knives in his guys' mouths so they can cut themselves out and then burn the ships from the ground up, or from the vessel up. How is that not cool?
No, I'm not denying that that's cool and awesome and that I love that part. For me, it is the results. It's the results of what happened, right? Szeth did some like seriously like crazy next level tactics, like things he was not supposed to go like turn himself in and do all this stuff, right? Like he wasn't really supposed to, but he really gambled like a 1 to 50 situation and won. And it was crazy. But I say he won. He was like practically to be killed. He was stabbed, right? And then he was healed and then used to portray an example to kind of instill fear in these people and then move forward. And so I talked about like a turning point in Szeth's story. And I feel like that is what we're seeing here. And I can't put my finger on it fully why this isn't my favorite, but I think it's just the weight of that. Like we've seen some stuff before with Szeth, and I feel like there's been glimmers of hope in his character, and we've seen a lot of development. This feels like I'm revisiting or maybe even seeing some of the worst of Szeth's history. He, specifically at the end of the chapter, whenever he's like reporting back and they make it out and they tell him you did not follow orders. And you can really tell Michael Kramer does a really good job of portraying this. And I think that contributes to why this is a harder chapter for me. He really portrays that Szeth is furious and like frustrated to the maximum that he did follow orders, but he is being told he did not. And he is just like, it felt like he was really pushed to his like wit's end, his last nerve regarding this whole these questions he's been asking of what is right, what is wrong. He said he followed orders to the letter and he's being told he's wrong, and he can't handle it. He can't take it. And that, as well as it was a bit wild that, he didn't necessarily know what he was saying, but he read or said the words that were told to him by this voice in his head, and it's probably going to get him into a ton of trouble. Yeah, that's mostly the reasons why. The covert operation and everything there, that was pretty epic. I'm always down for a good fight scene. This one was different for me.
Zeth subtracts for the first time since killing that soldier. I don't know what it is, 7 years ago at this point, something like that, 8 years ago. And he takes down 7 guys before he gets stabbed. I was like, whoa, that was the craziest part of the chapter to me. Forget the voice.
He subtracts a lot, big numbers.
Yeah, he does. Not to mention, so you're pointing out that he kills 7 people before he gets stabbed, right? They also point out at this, I believe it's at the start of this chapter, they're still like sorry, I just knocked something off my wall. I don't know if that picked it up on my mic. My apologies. Getting all razzed about this Zeth chapter. Okay. They point out while they're in the cave that Zeth is like beating up on their like leader and trainer and coach. Like, don't they? They're like, yeah, he sparred with him and makes a fool out of him. And so he kind of doesn't like Zeth. And so,
I mean, that was from a previous chapter. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, maybe so. Maybe I'm thinking of 57 or something back then. Yeah, but essentially, like, Zeth is the prodigy of prodigies. Like, he is head and shoulders above everyone, like, skill-wise. We've seen that all throughout. He's just a formidable fighter. It all started with his, like, we see in his flashbacks that he is so detailed and so focused and practices everything, literally practicing until he has things perfect, and it's all just intuitive. He's just a perfectly well-oiled machine, and it's. But yeah, this just started to get darker for Zeth, and I'm afraid. I'm excited about all the current day Zeth chapters. I'm getting more nervous for where our flashback Zeth chapters are going to show.
When he gets stabbed, the line that Zeth has is blood and something darker and more vile began to seep out of him. Did you guys key into that?
I did not. I'm like flipping pages over here to go find this. I didn't notice that at all.
There's something like dark smoke emits from him as he has been stabbed. And I was like, excuse me? That seems important. Any thoughts, Paul?
I didn't key into that, or if I did, I didn't stop to think. And now my mind is racing, and I don't have any answers. I don't have any theories, but I really want to.
The voice.
I don't know what this is.
It's living literally inside of him and like evaporates from him as he dies. Did you find the quote, Eliot?
I did not. I'm still trying to find it. But then, like,
I'll look for it.
We're gonna get this too. The and the voice also heals him with Stormlight.
Yes. At least temporarily gives him access to Stormlight. He sucks in a sphere and stands back up.
Oh, here it is. Here's your quote. Pain blossomed and the sword was yanked free. Zeth stumbled to the deck, stunned, and watched blood and something darker and fouler surge from his wound and across his hand. How did I not notice that? That's a big deal.
Yeah. I heard it and I was like, ooh. And then, he like falls over, talks to the voice a little bit, and the voice asks him, do you want one more chance? Zeth says yes. So then he sucks in a Stormlight sphere, says, I'm one of the Storm Striders or something like that. I don't remember exactly the term that he uses.
Storm Riders.
Yeah. And then kills 2 of the sailors and says, don't come back. And that's when he goes and gets in trouble. But yeah, what is this? There's something living inside of him. He's like has a parasite of the voice.
I mean, this just has unmade written all over it, which is what we've talked about. But
yes, it does.
I'm struggling because I want to know the finite rules. I'm assuming that's what we're gonna find out. But like, so we've the thrill, right? The unmade of the thrill, like we saw it kind of takes over, like in those moments, right? It kind of takes you over, but it's not something that talks to you, right? We've talked about this as the thrill is more of like a force of power that encapsulates people. This is like a specific like possession that Death is not like possessed, like he's operating, like you're right. Like this thing is in him, and I didn't really put that together. I was thinking like, yeah, like like a almost like a spren bond. Like your spren is like with you, but not like in you, not like part of you.
Unless he's got a gem heart that we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be
But then-
crazy. That would be the twist of all twists, right there.
There's another weird factor too here as we try and figure out what the voice is, because in the middle of this chapter, Zeth has a rock in his pocket, but it specifically is set up at the beginning of the chapter of he just like saw a rock and was like, oh yeah, I'm a soldier, I can touch rocks, so lucky rock, I'll take this with me. And then the raiders find the rock in his pocket and think it's an oath stone. So then they have this little chat about oath stones, and then the voice specifically says, yes, I encourage the use of oath stones because I approve of oaths. And I went, hang on a second.
Whoa.
Oaths is an honor thing. Is this voice associated with honor somehow? And then an even crazier thought popped into my mind. Could this be the Storm Father or the Storm Baker?
Okay, Eliot, I had a similar thought of, is this something related to that? They talk about oaths. I didn't instantly jump to like Stormfather or maybe a Storm Faker situation, something similar, but it has come up. I have been thinking about this a little bit.
Because hold on a second, I'll add to it. The Stormfather is so desperate for us not to discover something. That keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that. You're going to discover, oh no, this is information you don't need to know. Yada, 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 yada. What if the Stormfather has been moonlighting as the voice or whatever this is?
The Spren of Moons.
Ooh, yeah. So then there's this reference to the Spren of Moons, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
What is
So, a little context on that one. Zeth has fallen over, stabbed in the side, and says, oh, Spren of Moons, give me a second chance. And then the Spren says, yeah, okay. So either Zeth was praying and the voice just kind of responded anyway, or there has been a name associated for Zeth, and it is the Spren of Moons. And then I'm going to pivot to another suggestion. We have all sorts of different things for this voice. I'm going to go to something completely different. In the Venli chapter, which I read earlier, and I quote, the new gods, they didn't understand. Wait, hold on. And I quote, there weren't any radiance then. Once you sang with us, needing no radiant bonds. The humans were the same. That's the stones talking. And in this scene, the chapter right before, Zeth uses surge binding without a bond. There is no bond happening here. So that makes me think now the voice is back to the stones. I don't know. There's so many different things you could talk about.
There's a lot of options.
Yeah.
This one has left me quite puzzled. I think more than any of our other Zeth flashback chapters. Like some of these questions, but this one raised more questions to me than any. And I feel bad. I don't have anything. I don't know. I know I don't like it. I don't like whoever this is that's talking to Zeth. And the emphasis on the oath stones. We've seen where that took Zeth. That whoever had his oath stone just had complete control over him. So I assume that's where that's going to tie in. This feels that this just has unmade written all over it. I don't know the exact connection to the oaths and what we will see. Maybe if this is a twisted version of the Radiant Oaths is what we're going to see. No idea.
I did think it was interesting that the practice of oath stones was like a fringe of the religion that even Zeth hadn't really heard of. Like, he knew about it, but he never met anyone with an oath stone, and it was definitely not a mainstream thing. I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. So I guess Zeth really has to mess up in order to end up with an oath stone in a couple chapters here. I don't know how that's going to happen. Anything else, gentlemen?
There's so much in so few chapter numbers.
Yes.
I don't have anything else, but I'm sure after one or two more chapters, I will have plenty more.
It's very dense, a lot to sort through in few words.
In just these few chapters, we've all pointed out so many little bitty mentions that have had major implications if they remain relevant.
It feels like we're starting to get some big answers potentially. What shattered the planes? we're getting some sort of answers to that. But then there's more questions coming in, as we should expect. There's more and more that keeps getting brought up. Who is the voice? That one's taunting me. Who is going to be this thing that's guiding Szeth's actions? I'm really intrigued.
All right. We can close it there for episode 246. Next week is chapters 61 and 62 for episode 247. So we can reconvene with that next week. Thanks for joining me, Eliot and Paul.
See you then.
Toodles.